This is episode 138 of the Two Bald Brothers on a Microphone podcast, where we talk about the people, process, and technology to work together better inside of enterprises. This podcast was recorded on September 13th, 2017. In this episode, Tommy and I interview Kimberly Eubank, who was named one of Global Telecom's 50 Women to Watch in 2017. We talk about her approach to business transformation, the importance of using a story to get buy-in, and her perspective on being a woman in technology today and what inherent abilities they bring to the table. We wrap up with a discussion about why she leans on smaller firms like Threewill as part of making change happen. Enjoy this episode, and thanks for listening. Hello, and welcome to the Two Bald Brothers on a Microphone podcast. This is Danny Ryan. I'm here with Tommy Ryan, my co-host. How you doing, Tommy?
Doing well, Danny.
You look great this morning in
Thank
your
you.
orange Threewill, new orange Threewill
Almost
Nike
looks like
branded.
Clemson orange, doesn't it?
Or Auburn orange.
Yeah.
Or I guess you guys won this weekend,
Yeah,
so that
that's
was
nice.
a good thing.
I like that.
That was a very good thing. We're here this morning with Kimberly Eubank. How are you doing, Kimberly?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful. We're so excited to have you here and catch up
so
with
I'm
you.
Tennessee orange, by the
Okay.
way.
Oh.
So your orange is a little off for me, but close enough. It's in the
Needs to be
family.
a little bit lighter, I
Yeah,
guess.
ours is a little golder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you make things happen inside of organizations. And Tom, one of the things Tommy and I, we love when we're working with people who are movers and shakers inside of organizations. And I'm just interested to find out more of how do you approach this when you're typically going into a new organization and you're trying to figure out how do you lay out a roadmap. Can you talk us through that whole process?
Yeah, so to give folks a little bit of my background, I spent almost 20 years with a Fortune 10 company. And so in that role and then in subsequent roles, I really was fortunate to have been given some pretty large cross-functional initiatives to tackle. And no one ever trained me on it. No one ever taught me how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of throw you in, and if you survive that size, then the size just keeps exponentially expanding until you've got the big ones. So some of the things that I've learned is, you always have to get in and kind of learn and listen what's going on in the situation, because often in my role I was dropped into something that wasn't my day job, right? There is a big issue that needs to be resolved, some Gordian knot that needs to be untangled. Kimberly, go figure it out. And so first, I think you have to really show the folks whose day job it is that you're not there to pass judgment really on what they're doing. You're there to learn and to see if you can help in some way, shape, or form. And, they're in the heat of the battle every day. So sometimes you do need an external person to come in to kind of work simultaneously, because the day job stuff doesn't go away. So I think the first thing is really just listening and hearing what they're saying their challenges are. The place where I have found your conversations become a project is when you actually can formulate a list of what's broken or what needs fixed or what needs enhanced. Because when people can actually see it written down, it becomes real. And so I think finding that list is when people are like, okay, she actually got it. She heard what I said. She wrote it down. It's real. She's telling people it's real. So I think the list is the second place for me. Once you have the list, then you really have to go through as the leader of the effort and try to put like wholes together, right? Or like pieces together into wholes. So, these 5 things are similar. They may have to do with order processing. These 5 things are similar. They may have to do with, with billing. Whatever they are, you can kind of start to squish them together into projects.
Okay.
And the companies that I've worked out were very project-centric. So things got funded at the project level, things got done at the project level. So once you can show, you've taken your list of items and you've turned them into projects, then you kind of have to lay out the projects into into steps that build on each other, right? So this project is the base, framework, and then the next project gives you the first floor, and then the next project gives you the second floor, and then the next project puts in the plumbing and the electrical, and once you do that and you can kind of lay it out in that sequence, you can begin to tell the story, because the story is what gets you your financing. Because it always comes, there's always way more projects and way more things that you need to fix than there's capital to undertake in any given year, right? So you have to make sure that your story and the vision that you're painting for your roadmap is the most compelling one out there.
So it's not really, to get funded, a lot of times it's that first project you need to get funded, not the fifth project, but you need to tell the story of where this is leading to, so they can understand that in order for me to reach that goal, I've got this incremental step. And you could, I guess, sell it short, not telling that story, that vision of, I need to get this project done, and you're just looking at the inputs and outputs of that particular project. And some people that might get more technical about, well, this is the project we need to do, focus in just on that project. But you're saying it's more of laying out the story and the vision of where we're going, and this is the first step in that journey.
It's so interesting how human beings, the story, that's something that they can take with them and get behind, and how often that's a key skill to have and to be able to tell that story.
It's huge, especially in a large corporation. And I actually, and all the traditional project managers out there will hate me, but I hate doing a business case for a project.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's never just the project, it's the program.
Yeah.
And so the best example I have of that is I was working on identity and access management at the Fortune 10 company that I was at for a long time. And if you looked at any one of those individual projects, you would have said, there are higher priority projects on the list. But if you want a cohesive omni-channel customer experience, then you have to get to where your Fortune 10 company has one login across all of its divisions, across all of its products. And if you don't, to Tommy's point, start here at step one, you are delaying the end game.
Right.
And so you really do have to paint that picture. And I never just went to get funding for one project. I always went to get funding for a program. And because we would have multiple IT releases throughout the year, and I wanted to make sure that I had code in every single release, because even if it wasn't what I thought it was when I put the roadmap together, it was at least progression, right? So I always went for the whole year, and I always had multiple projects in that bucket, because inevitably the money that they give you in January isn't the money you're going to have in July, right? Cuts are going to come throughout the year. On the expense side, you're going to have to make trade-offs.
Right.
And so I always asked for perfection, right? And then as they cut back, I could make the decisions inside the program to swap things out, either to delay requirements or reprioritize the projects. So by getting funding at a program level, which I was very fortunate that I was almost always successful at doing. It allowed me the flexibility inside the program to shift things around if circumstances changed throughout the year.
Okay, that's interesting, because I think logically people might think that I need to go get funding just for the project and not give the full cost of the program because of the concern of the sticker shock. But you're saying you need to do that, so one, you have some options if the budget gets cut back,
or when the budget gets cut back.
When it will get cut back. Absolutely.
And then also you're not kind of coming short of the vision. So if you just sell the project, you get that project accomplished. The stakeholders might not be celebrating with you when you get that project accomplished. It's the whole program, it's the whole vision. So if they don't know that, they don't know the end game and kind of the all in, then you're not going to be able to get to the finish line because you haven't given them that insight.
You've hit two big of the 7 habits, which is the seek first to understand, which is habit 1, which when you say you come in and you listen, that's absolutely the first step in building trust, and then the begin with an end in mind. It sounds like that's what you're thinking of. Where are we going? What are we trying to do here? And you really have to do that.
Right. And Tommy knows, with Agile.
Right.
Right. I am actually, I understand, Tommy has educated me that there's a word for it now. What is it?
It's
water scrum fall. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's why I don't necessarily like pure Agile, because I don't think that pure Agile starts with the end in mind.
Right.
And so I am a firm believer that the business has to write full waterfall requirements so that you know what your end is. And then you can break it apart into chunks for sprint delivery. I'm all about iterative development, being able to see the code, sprint by sprint by sprint.
Working software, sprint by sprint.
But I really strongly believe the vision end to end has to be, 85% there.
Right.
Otherwise, you don't know where you're going, and you might code yourself in a corner because you didn't know what was coming around the next corner.
That's right.
Well, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have set the database up that way, right? And I've been in those shoes a couple of times.
Right.
Yeah,
we see that, and in a lightweight way. Be careful, you've entered into the world of process.
Yes.
That's dangerous around here. But in the world of Scrum, the sprint zero and the planning that's done before you start is creating all that backlog so you can have that vision. But I think when you're in these large programs, there's things that you just have to vet out and almost treat as mini projects that get you prepared for the overall project. Otherwise, you might architect yourself into a corner that, we didn't realize this, and that comes with your whole view of having a full vision, and that if you had that full vision, then you prepare that this is where we're going, not from just a business standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint. So when you look at the options that are in front of you, you're not looking at it just from project one, you're looking at it from the program level.
Right. And that's why I believe there's a difference between a project manager and a program manager, right? A project manager is really just focused on that one project, and they may know everything about that project, but they're not necessarily looking at all the pieces that project might impact, whereas more of a program manager really owns the whole end-to-end roadmap.
Right.
And so to me, they're the throat to choke, right? If there's, as far as tying things together and making sure that the individual pieces go into a cohesive whole. So it's their responsibility to say on project number 3, as you're trying to work out and collaborate with architects on what the right design is, wait, if we do that, remember project number 6, next February's coming, and it does this and this and this. So if we do this, are we precluding that later? Because we can't preclude that later. Right? And then have that conversation. But you really do need to understand where you're going in order to make sure that you don't waste time, resources, energy early on.
Yeah, that's interesting. The insight that we get is we get that Scrum methodology that has the sprint cycles, and we have the sprint reviews and the daily stand-ups, and we have those touch points with a stakeholder like yourself, but that's not the whole thing. What you're trying to do is there's communication and there's collaboration that needs to take place to, one, set that vision and continue to communicate the progress against that vision, and to somehow get pieces of what you're doing in front of people to say, are we going in the right direction? What do you think is key outside of you've got the Scrum process for the development side of things. How do you manage and kind of piece together the right collaboration that happens outside of the development effort?
Yeah, so I think the easiest part of a program is the building of it. Right? The getting it socialized internally within your organization and getting it funded is actually the hardest part. And that's gonna vary company by company on what their culture is and how to do it. But it all for me starts with the story.
Right.
Can you tell a compelling story about your program that makes people walk out of the room going, well, we can't not do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll find the money somewhere. We can't not do that.
Right.
And it may not be and I was used to large sums of money. It might not be the $50 million you ask for, but maybe you get $25 million the first year, right? And so you at least get started, and you also start the prep work of making sure that you're greasing the skids for the next budget year, right? So it's that constant, we're making progress, this is what it's doing, and making sure that your story thread is very consistent. And I don't know that everyone does that.
Yeah.
I think there were only a few of us, but I will tell you, I never didn't get the money I needed with that approach.
Right.
And there were others who didn't. So I think that just the communicating and the storytelling is huge when you're going for the money.
And what was that framework? I mean, what distinguished you versus the other person that wasn't getting the funding? Were you taking time to go meet with people face to face? Were there formal meetings set up and you just had the opportunity to kind of vocalize and have your kind of slice of time to advocate your project, your program?
I think that I went bigger with the end game than most people.
Okay.
I think a lot of folks really did concentrate on the project at hand or a couple of projects at hand. And again, it's hard when you are doing the day job and doing projects at the same time. It's really hard to take a step back and say, there's something bigger here that we need to do. There's a bigger story that we need to tell. It can become just a list of projects that you need to complete and check off, right? And so I really think what it is a lot of folks who have multiple projects on their list don't take the time to draw the connecting line between the projects to tell a story.
Okay.
And I think that's why I got more funding more consistently than others. And I've also seen it the other way around, where leadership knew that they needed to make a huge investment in the area, and they gave hundreds of millions of dollars to the area, and the area didn't have a good story. Yes, we all absolutely agreed that the area in question needed to be improved, modernized, made more omni-channel, better customer experience. But the how they were going to get there, in that instance, the money came before the story. And I think that didn't work out so well. It became disjointed because they were like, oh, we just got this windfall of money. Let's go spend, right? And you're not necessarily, if you've taken this step back and really thought about it and really laid out your roadmap and your story, you may not have spent in the exact same way. So I'm actually not really a proponent of the money coming before the story.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, because you want to have someone that has thought through it hard and has a way to defend why do we need this money and what are we going to get out of this, versus if the money's just there, then it can be more piecemeal of a land grab and I've got my individual project, I'm going to go grab those funds, and then you have 5 or 6 people trying to grab those funds, but there's no coherent vision that's a joint vision.
There's no consistent end game. And I think from the collaboration standpoint that you asked about, right, I think one of the reasons is I do spend a lot of time with the people who know what the issues are, that are in the day-to-day muck and mire, right? Because they're the ones giving me the list, right? So they're seeing me once they figure out kind of what I'm doing, and I'm not there to take land from them, right? I don't want your day job. Your day job is not my day job. I don't want your day job, right? I'm here to fix a bigger problem that's kind of overarching. Once they figure out that I might help them get money that they haven't been able to get on their own, then you're walking into that meeting not with just one person asking for this program, but you have the power of that whole group of people saying we all agree this is really, really broken, and we all agree that the things in this roadmap are things that we need to fix. And so you're really coming as a force, a force to be reckoned with, not just one individual trying to get money for one individual project or program, right? And so I think that also helps grease a little bit on the capital side.
Would love to understand. This has been a great conversation, and it sounds like you're sort of wrapping this up. And sounds like having your story, but then also having how your story relates to other people's stories is a part of this as well.
Yeah, you have to make sure you're not telling a different story than any individual function is telling, right? So you need to make sure that you're aligned on, if we do this, this is going to help sales operations do that, and that. If we do this, it's going to help customer operations do that, and that. If we do this, it's going to help sales do that, and that. Cool. So, and like I said, if they're going to get their problem solved, at the end of the day, what I've found time and time again is if you're going to actually help them get the problem solved that they have been trying to get solved for, months, years sometimes, then you get the allegiance very quickly because they want to jump on the train.
Share your perspective as a woman in technology, because a lot of these projects have been primarily technology projects, or some of them that you're working on.
Pretty much everything I do.
Share your perspective. Just share with Tommy and I sort of what is, because it seems like we're often working. Our business sponsors are often female, and I take that to be that they're much more open to collaborating outside their organization. They're used to working with different groups of people. What has been your perspective as a female within a lot of a primarily male-dominated department? How has that been?
Yeah. So I've always been on the business side, sitting outside the IT realm, right? But I do, we used to joke that, I'm not an IT person, but I play one on TV, right? So I think one of the reasons that you're finding that a lot of your business women are, or most of your sponsors are women, is because we multitask. Yeah. I think statistically better than men. And so I think we gravitate toward project management, cross-functional type of roles more so than men, at least in my work experience. The people that were given the really big cross-functional, things to do were almost always women. And I think it goes to, we just like having our hands in a little bit of everything, right? And so because of that, women that are drawn to that type of role, I think, and the really successful ones, they speak business and they speak technical. And so I've never had an issue as a woman working with the men, but I also have a very forceful personality. Right?
No,
yeah, I know. I'm so shy. I'm so shy and reserved.
Shut the front door.
No, exactly. So I think that what technical people, whether they be engineers or whether they be IT, right? They're very ones and zeros, right? It's black and white. Let's talk about the facts. Let's figure out the best design approach. Blah 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 blah. And it's not emotional. It's just, we're going to argue it. And Matthew at Free Will and I are a perfect example of that, right? We love each other, but we would get into the biggest bickering back and forth things because I'm like, no, I wanted you to build X, and but I built Y, and here's why I built Y. Well, here's what I wanted to build X, and after we get through, and everyone else would just be silent and let us have the Kimberly Matthew show. But at the end, what we would often figure out through that back and forth, and neither of us ever took it personally, right, was that really the answer wasn't X or Y. It was really a hybrid. It was really Z. But until we fought it out, neither one of us on our own would have ever gotten to Z.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think I like working with teams of men, and I think it's because I really like to dissect the issue, right? I really like to go, well, let's talk about whether A is going to work or it's not going to work, and what the side effects of it is versus B. And so I think that if you do that, then you also get their respect. So I can't say, mansplaining's a big word. I actually try to think back in my career whether I've been mansplained to, and I'm sure I have, but I didn't even realize I was. But I don't think that that's been a big issue in my career. I feel like if you come in and you're listening to what they have to say and they're listening to what you have to say, then you build a rapport and you build a respect. Because at the end of the day, it's really about, is this person going to help me move the project forward? Is this person adding value to the team? And so I have to say that as I was coming up, I didn't see, at the working team level, I didn't see a disparity in how the men and the women on the working teams were really treated. Now, if you want to talk promotions and upward mobility, yes, I saw some differences, but at the working team level, we treated each other like peers more often than not.
That's great. You were talking earlier about working across departments and then working outside your organization, say with vendors or partners. Where have you been successful in doing that?
So, I've worked with, a zillion vendors over the years, some large and some small. But when I think about the big projects that I worked on really closely with vendors that I really feel good about, I can name 3 examples with vendors who were small. And they weren't the Accentures or the Deloittes of the world, right? They were small, kind of niche shops.
Please tell me one of them was 3-Will.
One of them is 3-Will. One of them is 3-Will.
Please, they weren't. I don't all have to be 3-Will,
Yes.
but at least one of them.
At least one of them.
Please,
is 3-Will.
yes. Okay.
So
good.
one of them, who that actual company has now, the owner retired, and so he sold the company to someone else. So I won't mention the name because it changed names, so the name wouldn't matter. But we were doing a network conversion in that project. So we were moving from actually TDMA to GSM in the mobile space. And they were brought in to do all of our pre-production and post-production testing. So they tested our provisioning to make sure we had all of our provisioning accurate. We dropped them into the field to do field tests to make sure that the network was performing. So they were doing IT testing for us, and they were doing network testing for us. We continued to use them not just after that for merger integrations. Whenever we would bring in another carrier and we needed to merge their network with our network, or we needed to convert their billing system to our billing system. And they were excellent, but it was 20, 30 people, probably 50 at its apex. But because they were small and because they were really in the heat of battle with us every minute of every day, right, we got very close, and there was a respect there, and we accomplished great things with that vendor. Another vendor that I had is actually, I'm going to name them because they're still the same name, Openness out of Ireland. And I worked with them building a new rating methodology for the company. And again, that was where I didn't know what I didn't know. No one did, because it was brand new, and we kind of had to figure it out together. There was a lot of technical complexity in it, and that same back and forth that I described with Matthew, like we had to be that precise and that detailed. And then with 3-Will, again, I've worked with you guys in 2 different companies, and it's that openness. It's that ability in all 3 of those instances. It was the ability to just treat those vendors like they were one of the team. They weren't special. They weren't different. They were in the heat of the battle with us. You talk to them just like you would talk to anybody else, sometimes maybe even a little more energetically. But I really feel like those types of relationships brought about better work product, Whereas what you'll find with, or what I've found with some of the larger vendors that can come in, is that there's more of a hierarchy of, who do you need to complain to if something's not going right, or who do you need to talk to?
There needs to be more process to keep the quality there.
Yeah, and it's not as interactive, and it's not as I haven't formed bonds with those folks like I have with some of these smaller, more niche shops.
Right.
And if you do good work like that, you're going to get good referrals.
Yeah.
Right. So so for me, size has mattered with vendors.
What's next for you?
So right now, I actually just finished my last gig a couple months ago. So I've learned a new word. It's called fun employment. So I am currently in fun employment.
And you
right
learned
now.
this from millennials,
I
right?
did. I had my last team, a large portion of it was in New York City, and a large portion of it was millennials. And so when we ended that assignment, we all went off to find our next gig, and they informed me that in NYC with the millennial crowd, it's not unemployment, it's fun employment. So I've kind of taken that as my mantra this summer. So I am in the process of looking for my next kind of challenge. I really like transformational work. I really like work that has a lot of different components. I am that typical multitasking, cross-functional kind of woman. And so I do like being able to take the pieces and rearranging them into a more seamless, integrated whole. So I like technology. So I want to stay in technology, and I want, and I want a job that has some challenge to it. But beyond that, I'm not,
That's awesome.
I'm not so specific about where the next few months is going to take me.
Well, wherever you go, you're going to be successful.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You will, and we've loved. I know I'm a bit of an outsider looking in, but everybody has loved working with Matthew. Some days I'm not sure.
Well,
some days.
Matthew
You may
and I,
not
we
say
have
he
that
loves
love-hate,
working with you, but it's just. I think Tommy and I really we look for people like you who are really making things happen, and where we can build a long-term bond, and where we can build up trust and be able to form a relationship over a longer period of time. And it's just been wonderful to see the things you've been able to do, and just to be a part of it. I think Tommy and I are really happy to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for us at Threewell, it's more than just work. It's creating an impact on people and being behind people that you feel excited about being behind, that you know something's going to get accomplished and something big, and that's been exciting for us over the years. And it's great to see someone that is passionate. There's a lot of people that kind of just punch the clock, even at the higher level roles, and to see someone that really wants to care about the problem, and we care about the problem, and there's nothing worse than working for someone that doesn't care. It doesn't motivate the team, and so we're looking forward to seeing the impact you make in your next gig.
Well, thank you. And from my standpoint, having a vendor that is going to get the job done, and that you can trust, and that you can, over time, it's happened over time. I've been a little bit more and more hands off with you guys, because I know that Matthew and I joke that we speak each other's language, right? Like he speaks Kimberly, I speak Matthew. It's fine. We got it. So, and it's good to have that rapport, because then you don't have to micromanage as much, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, if there's ever an opportunity to work together again, we've done it at 2 companies. So
Yes. Yeah, we like things in threes.
there might be, everything comes in 3s, right?
Well, thank you for doing this, Kimberly. I appreciate your
thank
time.
you.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.